Hi, I'm Phil, and today I'm going to talk about my first experiences and impressions with using the new SenseCAP devices from Seed Studio. So I'm going to use this mind map to walk through some of these experiences. I'll describe, first of all, what SenseCAP is all about. Look at some of the devices that I've purchased and configured. Have a look at some of the issues, and these arise from the projects that I've been working on. And I'll do an overall critique, the good and the bad points. And finally, I'll give you some references. Okay, so SenseCAP is all about providing robust devices that work on the farm. That is, they work outdoors in all sorts of weather, and you can rely on them so that they give you data. And that data can be used by the farmer to make decisions about improving the productivity on the farm and using resources much more effectively. So the sort of data that you capture relate to the soil temperature, moisture or conductivity, the air temperature and humidity, the carbon dioxide, and the light level. And there's more coming on the way. So I'm looking at also measuring oxygen and other parameters in the garden. Now they're using a special wireless interface called LoRaWan, and I've got that connected to the Things network, or TTN. But the devices themselves connect to other Grove devices using RS485, and you can configure those either as GPIO, for example, logic levels, analog, and in the general device, the data logger, the S2100, they can be connected to Grove devices. But there are also specialist devices like the light sensing, the 2102, and the other devices can be used to capture soil and air measurements. So the way that you use the communications, LoRaWan is used for the extended communications, that is from 2 to 10 kilometers. And to configure everything, when you get a new device, you use Bluetooth, and it then pairs with the service that you want. And there's a choice of different cloud services that are available, although I'll be using the TTN network. And the applications are for smart farming, and not just on the desktop, but out in the real farm. And my particular interest is in STEM education, where I want to use these devices, particularly for agricultural colleges, as a demonstration. Okay, so here's a comparison on the right using traditional LoRaWan sensors and how long it would take to set up everything with SenseCAP. So it's very quick, and even though it's specified that you can take less than 3 minutes, for most of the devices that's true. So once you get a hang of how it works, you can set up the devices very quickly. And it does take a bit longer if you're going to do this in LoRaWan. But I must admit that I think that 3 minutes doesn't really apply when you're looking at the data logger and getting it working with a special configuration. In fact, it took me many days to get the data logger to work, but all the other devices did work within a very short time. And here are the devices that I've been using. Starting off with the one on the top is the data logger, then the light sensor, And under that, there's the CO2, temperature and humidity, measuring the parameters in the air. And on the bottom, there's the sensors for the soil. And all work straight out of the box very quickly, except the data logger. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. I've constructed special projects to try and find out what was going on there. But in addition to these packages, there's also sensors. And I've got the water leak sensor and the liquid level sensor. And they can be connected to the data logger module. And just released a couple of days ago was the SenseCAP 2110 ZOL LoRaWan controller. And this looks very interesting because it extends the possibilities of sensing and using other grove modules, such as oxygen and even the sunlight sensors. So here are my projects. Most of the time I've spent on commissioning, and most of that was very straightforward. The only problem I had was in getting the TTN decoder, or the Things network, to decode the data logger. And I also did a project in getting the TTN MQTT to work and to decode that using Node-RED. So looking at my commissioning, I went through using the SenseCAP Mate on my iPad, and that's how I communicated and configured all of the devices. And no problems with that. It worked fairly well. All the other devices, sometimes there was a couple of issues with configuration, but generally they went okay. And I looked at the communications, and we'll have a look at some of the results in a minute. Now with MQTT, you go to the Things network, and you get a special key for MQTT. And that's what you use on Node-RED. So here's an example where on the top, I'm using the software MQTT Explorer, and I'm decoding some of the messages that are coming in there. And I take that a little bit further with my Node-RED programs. And you can see that it's a very, very simple Node-RED. All you have to do is just configure the MQTT nodes. And you can see an example of one of the messages where I've also set the battery condition. You can see that it's 100%. And you can see that I've got that set for 300 seconds for my upload interval. And after that, it's reporting the carbon dioxide at 448 and the air temperature and the humidity is right on the bottom here. So work quite well. And I can use my local Node-RED server to extract the values and put those into a Microsoft Excel format. And looking at the results that come up on the TTN viewer, you can see that it's decoding those values quite well. So with the help of a decoding formatter, you're able to extract the results fairly quickly. Everything except for the data logger. Here's where I had trouble. It's reporting an error 2, and that indicates that there's something wrong with the number of bytes in the payload. So I had to do another project to try and work out what's going on there. And this is the project. So I want to test the TTN decoder. And this project uses one of the Grove switches. So you can see that over here. This is the Grove switch, and this is much more convenient than another logic device. But it's also possible to configure it with the connections on the terminal for the data logger for analog or even RS485. So let's have a quick look through what I did there. So the connections using the tilt sensor, this is a little bit inconvenient. So rather than holding the tilt sensor, because I've got a sample time of 5 minutes, I exchanged that for the binary switch. And this is the connections to the data logger, to the Grove switch. And overall, I got some help from the SenseCAP technical team, and they told me that there were other TTN and other data formatters. So I was wondering whether I had the correct one installed. And what I did was to go through them all and see if I can get the results. So eventually I got this version of it. This is version 2. And you can see the messages on the left that are coming from node red. So eventually I got it to work. So you can see down here that I'm getting the values. When I tilt, when I switch the sensor from high to low, or from low, which is on top, to high, that it's giving me the correct measurement value. And overall, I was happy that I was able to get that working. And I'll be doing some extra testing with the analog inputs. So overall, I'm quite happy with the SenseCAP. I've got all the sensors now working, all the modules are working. The hardware is quite robust and it can be used outside. It's been outside for about a week now in heavy rain, and it's been no problems at all. I've been able to use the SenseCAP, and I should be able to get the data in the right format that I want to use. Also had a look at the SenseCAP portal, and it works, but if you've got it connected to TTN, then it doesn't appear simultaneously with the SEED SenseCAP portal. I needed quite a bit of help, and I was able to get that from the SenseCAP team. They answered all my questions quickly and resolved the issues. So I was able to get them to update their manual, because TTN had actually changed some of the names in their configuration. So I guess some of the bad points is that I found some things a bit misleading, but once you get the hang of it, you can overcome that. I guess the only thing is that the SenseCAP seems to show online or offline, but that means it's on or offline to the SEED SenseCAP portal and not to TTN. So I found that a little bit misleading. And when I did the upgrade, the firmware upgrade for my data logger, it crashed and I thought it was bricked. But eventually I got help from the SenseCAP team, and by shorting the reset pin on the S100 board, I was able to fix that, and it was working again. The other issue that I've got, I'm interested in FarmBeats. FarmBeats is really there to help with agricultural and even farmers that want to learn the technology. And much of that learning happens on the desktop. So it would have been great if the sensors, their robust configuration was available as FarmBeats sensors. So that hasn't happened, and perhaps it might happen in the future. I found that the version control is an issue, and I had to go through all of the configurations after discovering that there was some software available for the formatter. eventually I got the right version, and I think that could have been made a little bit easier in the configuration management. So on the technical side, while I've asked questions, I haven't found those answers published anywhere. So there's just not enough technical data published, particularly if you've got problems. So rather than being an expert in coding, you have to be a systems engineer and be able to configure it and know how to solve problems either in the hardware or the software. And that takes a little bit of a different perspective. Overall, I'm quite happy. I've got SenseCAP now working in the garden, and I'd like to explore it with other devices in the future. So if you're interested, I'm happy with SenseCAP, and I'll be exploring this a bit further, particularly with other Grove sensors. So hop on to the Seed Studio website, have a look at the devices, and there is a special web server available. There's also help files, and there's help available on the Discord channel. So that's all for me for the time being. I'll catch up with you later.